Spring training is officially underway, and tonight we examine the Chicago Cubs. How did they do this offseason? How are they set up for success in 2025? What holes are left on their roster? How are they going to ultimately finish the year? We'll go ahead and grade their offseason and kind of fill in what holes they have left as well. Many things we'll get to, all things Chicago. We'll also give you updates on Alex Bregman and his deal with the Boston Red Sox, and some updates on the Los Angeles Dodgers and the San Diego Padres. That and much more ahead here tonight at the Upside Sports Network. And welcome into the MLB Hot Stove Daily here at the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Appreciate you guys joining us late on a Thursday evening. It is the first episode in our installment for this spring training, covering every single MLB team, giving you the breakdown of how things went this offseason, what holes are left on their roster, and much, much more. We'll also get into some updates on Alex Bregman as well. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Follow us on X at UpsideSN and on Facebook, Upside Sports Network. But let's start with the updates on Alex Bregman. Yesterday, he agreed to that 3-year, $120 million deal to go to the Boston Red Sox, $40 million in average annual value. There are deferrals in there that say the present day money comes down to, say, 3 years, $90 million. To me, all I hear is you're still getting 3 years paid at roughly $40 million per year. That's still an incredible payday. Understandably, present day money might decrease the overall value long-term of it. Maybe you could invest the money, maybe you couldn't. All I know is he's going to guarantee himself $120 million if he decides to not exercise those opt-outs. Now, he does have an opt-out after the first and second year. There does seem to have be some confusion anyway as far as where he will play. I heard immediate reports come out there and say, yes, he was going to play second base for the Red Sox. I hear other reports from Ken Rosenthal and others that say maybe, just maybe, he plays third base. I think this will be sorted out during the spring training season that we're going to have here. Maybe they'll figure out some type of platoon situation over there so that they can get their young guys up to the major league level at some point this season. Their top infield prospect is a second baseman. Story's going to play a lot of shortstop this year. I'd imagine Marcelo Mayer eventually will get a call up there. But Boston has a very good bat in that lineup now. I know you guys have been really hard on how his bat ultimately looks in that Astros lineup, but I got to say, the fourth best field for anybody to play in if you're a right-handed hitter, that's going to be Fenway Park. That green monster is going to help Alex Bregman out quite significantly. I think it might even help him more than the Crawford boxes did. But I appreciate you guys joining us. Some other updates I wanted to touch on. The update for Clayton Kershaw. His deal is $7.5 million guaranteed. He does have several performance bonuses in there based on active roster time, based on game started time. Basically, if you get a half season out of Clayton Kershaw, which is what we might be expecting, best case scenario, that $7.5 million could turn into $16 million total. So good deal overall for Clayton Kershaw. One other minor league signing for the Dodgers today, that was Luis Garcia, who was the setup guy for the Angels last year. A very good one, by the way. Pitched to a 3.71 ERA, kind of an older relief pitcher. Will give them some depth in that minor league system. And with the guys that are going to be headed towards the 60 AL, I wonder if he's going to be called up to start the season, kind of in that Ryan Brazier role. So we'll have to see what happens there. We'll get into Brazier and how he affects the Cubs later on in our show anyway. One other update on the Texas Rangers and their rotation. Chris Young spoke with the media today, basically saying they were not going to be going with a six-man rotation. His primary reason for saying so is that he doesn't want to have a shorthanded bullpen. When you have a six-man rotation, that means you have one less guy for that bullpen, and he wants to make sure that bullpen has every advantage that they need. They signed a ton of bullpen help, so I can't argue with him there. Now, as far as your rotation, when healthy, the rotation is probably going to feature DeGrom, Eovaldi at the top, Gray as your 3, Molly as your 4, and Bradford sounds like he's going to be your number 5 starter. Now, I know a lot of Rangers fans are wondering, what happened to Kumar Rocker? What happened to Jack Leiter? I thought they were ready to embrace the next step. Well, here's a couple of news and notes. Does anybody expect that DeGrom or Molly or Gray or any of these starting pitchers are going to make every single start this season? No. They're going to need to get some starts out of their minor league system here, and I imagine Dane Dunning will even have a start or two if DeGrom goes down as well. But you look at Kumar Rocker. He hasn't thrown over 120 innings since, 4 years ago with Vanderbilt. He needs time to build up his arm strength. So I wonder if they kind of put him on a slower pace than the rest of the pitchers in spring training, so that way he's ready by, say, May, somewhere in there. Not saying that he's going to throw a lot of minor league innings before that, but what I am saying is that they'll use most of those bullets at the major league level once one of those arms go down. Tyler Mahle only made, 3 starts last year. He's not exactly a guy I would depend on to make 30 starts this season, and I would expect Kumar Rocker to be the second call-up. The first one, I think, is Jack Leiter. He's a little bit more stretched out, pitched a lot more innings last year. He was actually the pitcher of the year in the Pacific Coast League, which, by the way, is a very hitter-friendly league anyway. So great on him, even though he didn't necessarily have the greatest numbers, because, again, hitter-friendly league. He was the best of that bunch. Now, when he got to the majors, didn't have exactly the performance he was looking for, but was still solid. Showed a lot better results anyway than he had previously. But I'm looking forward to seeing what Jack Leiter has to offer this year. I wonder if he's the first man up out of that minor league system when there is an injury. Appreciate you guys joining us tonight. Let's go ahead and check in and say hello to everybody. Holly, Cowboys Nation, Rafe, Paranormal, welcome in, welcome in. Sean, Verlis, appreciate you guys joining us as well. Master Vinman, good evening, good evening. All right, looks like you got beat there, Rafe there. Sorry about that one. Dallas took care of business. Yes, they did. Kessler Edwards is playing himself into a regular contract with that Mavericks team. Jaden Hardy is looking like a trade piece in the offseason, at least to offload his salary, if nothing else. Paranormal, what's the news on the Yankees? And if there's no news, what do you speculate will happen soon for the Yankees? What do you think their plans are? Good question, Paranormal. That kind of segues me into the next update around Nolan Arenado. Now, John Mozeliak spoke with the Cardinals media today, basically saying that there's been no news on Nolan Arenado, that his top destination looked like it might have been Boston. With them getting Alex Bregman, that market dried up very, very quickly. And the Cardinals, remember, were the ones that reached out to the Yankees and Dodgers and Red Sox to see if they could re-engage them on a trade before the start of spring training. Doesn't look like that's going to happen, and it may take all the way up until the start of the season. Mozeliak even led there to be some speculation that he might actually start the season with the Cardinals. I don't buy that. I think there's going to have to be some recognition here by Nolan Arenado that, hey, Boston's not going to happen for you. New York is not willing to spend money. The Dodgers, even if we eat half that salary, are still not willing to spend the money on you because they have Max Muncy already there. So you can understand why Mozeliak kind of issued the statement here in the media. I think this was a message directly to Nolan Arenado more than anybody else that, hey, you're going to have to expand your no trade list here. That way we can see if we can negotiate another trade with another team. Now, I wonder if Arenado is regretting passing on that Houston Astros deal. Doesn't look like that's going to happen anymore. I wonder if two teams that we haven't mentioned too much with Nolan Arenado begin to kick the tires on his availability. One, the Chicago Cubs, who we're going to get into tonight, and two, the Detroit Tigers. For the Yankees, it just didn't look like they had the financial resources to do anything right now. Marcus Stroman, by the way, for the Yankees, has not reported to camp. Big league players do not have to report until the 22nd, so he says he's not going to report until then. He says, I'm just a veteran player, that's what I want to report. That is coming from Aaron Boone, the manager there for the New York Yankees. So he says everything's fine, but I think all of us on the outside can see this for exactly what it is. That Stroman realizes he's a very good starting pitcher, or at least has been in the past, that he wants to be in a starting rotation to begin the year. And with the Yankees rotation right now, it doesn't look like Stroman is going to be in that starting staff, at least the way it's currently set up. Maybe he's the long man out of the bullpen. Maybe they just put him on the IL and just keep him on the shelf until they have an opening in that rotation. But I think this is going to be headed towards a divorce here fairly quickly. I wonder if this is just being, posturing like Stroman says it is and Boone says it is. But I think we can all realize for what it actually is, and that Stroman wants out. He wants to be on somebody's staff to begin the year, whether that means the Yankees have to eat some money on Stroman's deal, whether that means they have to attach a prospect or two. Whatever has to happen, sounds like Stroman wants to find his way out of that New York ball club. So I know there's going to be a lot of speculation in New York as far as all the papers and podcasts and everything out there that's going to say Stroman wants out. Stroman's absolutely going to he's absolutely furious at the Yankees. Blah blah blah. That's not the way it is. I think Stroman's just a very proud individual that wants to be in the starting staff. And if that's with the New York Yankees, I think he'd be very happy with that situation. But he sees the way this rotation is set up. He sees that he's probably not going to break camp as one of the starters in that rotation. So he wants to see if he can force their hand a little bit by putting a little bit of pressure on him here before the start of his official spring training, which sounds like it will be on the 22nd. So that's your update for the Yankees. They're very limited with budget. Doesn't sound like they're going to do anything crazy as far as a big trade or anything like that. Rosters are pretty much set across the league at the start of spring training. Expect some deals, though, in the final couple weeks of spring training as teams figure out their rosters, figure out who loses a position battle, and then maybe that other player who lost that position battle might be a better fit on another ball club. Leody Taveras for Texas is one player I'm keeping an eye on as well in that same vein. Paranormal, can't wait to watch you through the whole year. Been here since basically the whole offseason watching you grow. Appreciate it, Paranormal. I know we gained quite a few members to our group here, quite a few subscribers anyway. So if you guys are enjoying the content, be sure to hit that like and subscribe. We're going to cover every single team in the build up to the start of the MLB season. And like I said, every single night from here on out, we will be live doing a daily MLB show. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe and join us every night around 9, 10 o'clock and keep you guys updated on the latest from MLB. One other news item I will say is that last year we did some games earlier in the year. We did some kind of live chat games anyway, kind of talked about the game as it was going on, did a little bit of play-by-play for you guys. We're going to have a return of that this year. We'll probably do a game of the weeks during the weekday, and then we'll probably do a game or two on the weekends if my schedule allows it, maybe even more. But we'll start with that schedule for now. So look forward to that this coming season as well. We've grown quite a bit with our baseball audience, and I want to reward that audience that's been with us this entire offseason by actually enjoying some games with you guys. We might be doing some other exciting things that I can't get into yet, but some things where we might actually get together as a community and go to a game or two. So a lot of exciting things coming our way here at the Upside. So make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe, and we'll see what we can do going into the 2025 season. All right, Sean, will the Cubs make more moves? Buster Olney said they could trade for Arenado. I think that's a possibility right there with Buster on that one, that the Cubs could still make a move here on Arenado after missing on the last best bat left on the free agent market in Alex Bregman. There's nobody else that's even close on the free agent market. Trade market, Arenado is probably the most available of all the trade candidates that are out there, at least at the moment. That'll change at the trade deadline, and so I expect this trade to get done very quickly before the start of the season, hopefully. If it goes into the early parts of the season, maybe it goes a little bit into that range, but a little bit surprised here that they weren't trying to get this thing done a little bit earlier and waited once again till the very last minute. Verlis, hello. Rafe, Gallo being in the minors for the White Sox is just telling of how bad you need to retire. I don't know about that. I think there's a lot of minor league guys that took minor league invites from a lot of different teams. Joey Gallo just sees this as an opportunity to make the big club there. Because if you show that you're able to still produce at an MLB level, or at least that you can grow a little bit, then he has a pathway to playing time there with the White Sox. Whereas, say, if you sign a minor league deal with, say, the Dodgers, for instance, do you think there's any way he was going to break camp with the Dodgers, even with how loaded that roster is? Not a chance. With the White Sox, though, he has the legitimate chance to make it to start to opening day with that roster. I hope he does. Great guy. Really hoping for the best for him. That White Sox team was terrible. And, I'm always hoping for the best in a lot of these players out there. Joey Gallo is one of the good ones. And I know he's had some rough stops over the years. But I would like to see him get back to at least somewhat of the player that he was towards the end of his time with the Rangers. Master Minman, it's okay with you, Michael. I will randomly give you my obviously biased reasons why the Cubs will win 90-plus games in 25. You won't hurt my feelings if you disagree. No problem there, Master Vinman. Most of the Yankees need something, man. Something, yes, I would say I would like them to add one more high-end relief pitcher. There are a couple of guys that I wanted to kind of mention here. As far as the top-end relievers that are still left on the market, you're talking about David Robertson, you're talking about Kyle Finnegan, Kendall Graveman. That's kind of the market that's out there right now. Starting pitching, you're looking at Andrew Heaney. Hitters, Justin Turner. That's kind of your best hitters that are available. So the market is pretty much dried up. Not a lot of teams have a lot of money left out there. So that's kind of going to dictate where these guys go more than anything else, as well as if there's a chance to compete for a playoff spot as well. But money, most of that's dried up around the league. I wonder if somebody has, say, 8 to 10 million just laying around a little bit here, where they might try to get Robertson. As far as Heaney, I think that's going to be another deal in that $8 to $10 million range. Outside of that, I think you're looking $4 to $5 million deals, and if you put deferrals in there, any team could do those things as well. Let's see. Come on, Yankees. Rafe, Gafford out 6 weeks. I did just see that one pop across my screen. Grade 3 MCL sprain. That knee injury did look very serious when it happened. That's why I was shocked when they said it was only a 2-week injury. This basically means that Anthony Davis will be out 4 weeks and might be the first one back of the Dallas big men outside of Dwight Powell. Powell might be back in, say, 3 weeks. Even if he's ready to return right now, he needs to get his conditioning back. So the Mavericks are going to be playing very, very small for a significant period of time here. So hopefully they get Gafford, Lively, AD back, because they need some size on that roster. But Kessler, Edwards, hats off to the effort he's been given to them. Master Vinman, the Cubs bullpen last season was reasonable. Responsible for 6 to 10 losses, I would say. They have significantly improved in that area this offseason. PCA started to get comfortable in the majors in mid to late July. I'm hoping he starts the season where he left off. My thoughts as well on both counts there, Master Vinman. Rafe, I didn't see he got a spring training invite. He did. Gafford, Lively, and Davis all injured for the Mavs. Yes, they will be out probably until the beginning of April for Lively and Gafford. For Davis, he might be out until the end of March. Sean, it's not Jed Hoyer's fault that the Cubs don't spend big. The owner won't let him. To a certain extent, I think he does take a his fair share of shrapnel for the situation that they are in, but they certainly do spend. I will say that. We'll show you guys their payroll table here in just a moment, just to show you guys where their money is actually coming in at. I blame Nico not finishing out this roster, shaking my head. They have plenty of bigs. It's just a matter of all of them, and I mean all of them, are injured. That's the issue there. Michael Busch had a decent rookie season, and hopeful Cubs fans believe he can build on that. He really adapted to playing first base. However, his BABIP, meaning how lucky was he as far as the balls that were batted in play, he was very lucky last year. So I'm expecting a decent amount of regression for Michael Busch. Not saying he's not a good option, but I am saying that they need to do a little, or that he's not going to have as good of a year as he did this past year, and hopefully he can build on some of the struggles that he's due to have this upcoming season. Not just them, but I felt like our whole team, Elo, Christie, Exum, will have to perform in the upcoming weeks. Absolutely. Will Jed Hoyer be back next season? I think he leaves. I think he might be fired more than anything else there, Sean. All right. So that's kind of your news and updates anyway from around the world of baseball. I know there's probably a couple that I'm missing here, but I want to get into our spring training update for the Chicago Cubs, the preview for the 2025 season. So without further ado, let's begin. And welcome to the 2025 Chicago Cubs MLB preview show. Let's go ahead and start our show here with where the roster currently is for the Chicago Cubs. Let's start at the top with what their roster really looks like. Currently, you look at their lineup, you're going to have Ian Happ probably in center. Using Fangraphs here to kind of give you an idea of what their roster is really going to look like. Kyle Tucker, their big offseason acquisition, the trade there that sent Paredes out the door along with one of their top prospects in Cam Smith, and a pitcher that was ready to start his career at the big league level. I think this lineup overall does have a bigger cog in it with Kyle Tucker, but where's the depth? That's my question here. You sent out Bellinger to the Yankees, sent out Paredes to the Astros. You bring in the addition of Kyle Tucker, and then where's your next piece? Where's the Alex Bregman? Where else is the other big addition here? That's a question mark here as we continue to go through this lineup. DH, they're probably going to have Suzuki. Bush over there at first base. I just talked a little bit about how his numbers last year were kind of inflated for how lucky he was on balls batted in play. I'm expecting some regression from him. Not saying he's not going to have a good year. I'm just saying that he's going to have a little bit of struggles this year that he might not have had last year. And I think how he adapts to those is really going to tell how his career arc is really going to go here. You also have the steady guy in there in Dansby Swanson there. Nico Horner's going to start the season injured, it sounds like. John Birdie might be his fill-in for the start of the year. Pete Crow Armstrong seemed like he got more comfortable as the year went along in center last year. Matt Shaw could be on the big league roster at some point early in the year. I'm not expecting him to be there to begin the season. That's my question mark there for them. And at catcher, sounds like Amaya and Carson Kelly could be the ones splitting the work there. I believe Reese McGuire, is in the minor leagues for them. I think he got a non-roster invite. Yes, he did. So there's your catching depth for the Chicago Cubs. So as far as this lineup goes, to me, this is their single biggest area of need coming into the offseason. And yes, they are certainly a better team right now. Let me pull up my screen for you guys. So looking at this lineup, you have Happ, Tucker, Suzuki, Bush, Swanson, Horner, Pete Crow Armstrong, Shaw, and Amaya. I'm just saying that this lineup, it's good. It's a decent lineup. But where's the real scary threat in this lineup outside of Kyle Tucker? Ian Happ, I think, is a good option for you. They're projecting a 3-WAR season for him. I'd say that's a fair estimate. I think Kyle Tucker, a 4.7, I think that's kind of low. I think he's going to have a monster year for him. Seiyu Suzuki, 2.4. Honestly, I think that's a little bit high. I like his bat in the lineup. I'm not saying it's a great bat, but I'm saying it's better than what the Cubs necessarily have further on down in that lineup. Bush, I'm expecting some regression. They're only expecting a 2-WAR season. I would say if he conquers his struggles early in the season, that would be a reasonable expectation for Michael Bush. As far as Dansby Swanson, that defense really does inflate his WAR number there. Horner just depends on his availability. If he's available in May through the end of the season, then I'd say a 3.5-WAR season is fairly reasonable for him. Pete Crow Armstrong, very young outfielder for them, 22 years old, almost 23. I'm curious to see how this lineup really works out because I think it's missing some real depth to this lineup. There are some good options, don't get me wrong, but none of them are scaring the opposing team besides Kyle Tucker. You can figure out a way around Bush. You can Dansby Swanson, Horner, Pete Crow Armstrong. Okay, you got some good offensive options, I suppose, but none of them are at the level of a Kyle Tucker. None of them are at the level of a Alex Bregman. Nobody in there is an impact bat for me besides Kyle Tucker, and that's the missed opportunity in this lineup. You look at their bench, you're probably going to be starting the season with Carson Kelly in that catcher mix, maybe Reese McGuire. Hit here or there. I'm not really worried about that one. The rest of the mix there, you got Workman, Birdie, Canario. As far as the non-roster invitees, just want to scroll down here. Some guys that you might be looking at, Moises Ballesteros. There was Vidal Brujan, who was traded over from the Marlins earlier this offseason as well. Just looking at Nicky Lopez is another one. James Triantos anyway. Trying to think if there's anybody else that might be a factor for this team. Kevin Alcantara. Nobody else there. And then on pitching side, you got Cade Horton, of course, non-roster invitee as a AAA pitcher. I think he's got a chance to be at the big league level at some point this year. Wicks as well. Nobody else here besides Pearson in the minors, or could be on the major league roster. Then a couple of non-roster invitees that are somewhat interesting. Trevor Richards, Phil Bickford comes to mind. And that's pretty much it. Let's look at the pitching staff really quick here for the Cubs. Their rotation is going to feature Imanaga, Steele, Tyone, Boyd, Assad. They could have Ray in there as well. He's probably going to be their long reliever in the bullpen, according to Fangraphs this year. Their closer, though, is going to be their biggest improvement outside of Kyle Tucker. Ryan Presley takes over as their closer. Brazier comes in as a setup guy. Really like how they built up this bullpen a little bit here. You got Porter Hodge in there, Tyson Miller, Thielbar. They're counting on there. Colin Ray, they're counting on as a long reliever for them. And then, of course, Pearson, like I mentioned earlier. But looking at this roster, the lineup to me leaves a little bit to be desired. There's not another impact bat in there besides Kyle Tucker. The rotation, I like Imanaga. I like Steele quite a bit. Not a lot of depth beyond Tyone and Boyd kind of soaking up some innings there. Boyd, if you believe his numbers last year, maybe he'll have a great year for the Cubs. But I don't count on, 2-3 starts really being a season in the making here. So I wonder how good he's going to really be. I thought there was an opportunity here in this offseason to bring in a Jack Flaherty. Ultimately, they chose not to do so. Let's kind of check up on a few of your comments here. Will the Cubs throw blank check at Tucker if he performs this year? I think they will. If Shaw starts in AAA, who starts at third? I think they might start Brujan or might start a Justin Turner, somebody along those lines, to give them some flexibility in that infield to start the year. I think Shaw probably starts the season at AAA but finds his way on the big league roster fairly early on. Let's see here. Justin Steele was injured for the first 2 months of last season. Reports are positive and healthy that he's looking good. That's what you want to hear when you go into spring training, is that everybody's coming in healthy and looking good. And so far, reports on Steele are just that. Joe, welcome in. Do you think it was a gross overpay by the Red Sox to sign Bregman? I do not. I thought that was kind of the big bat that they needed. Now, I think the mistake for them is that they were $10 million higher average annual value than what any other team really was. Kind of a surprising deal for them. But for the Red Sox, they had some deferrals in there, and present day value says the deal's really 3 for $90. But for me, I still think it's a tad bit of an overpay by an inexperienced front office that is inexperienced as far as negotiating big long-term free agent deals. Now, this is still a short-term deal, but it shows the inexperience in that front office for them to negotiate big free agent deals. And at least they got this one done. We'll have to see how it pays out on the other end, but I think it's a good signing overall. Master Man, Dansby Swanson was injured and still played. True. Any improvement at the plate will help for 2025. He's still a really good defender. Agree there. I think his biggest asset will continue to be his glove. Offense, I think, even in his best seasons with the Braves, I think his best seasons are always led by his glove first. Offensively, you're hoping for a league average hitter, maybe a little bit above that in a good season for him. You're not exactly counting on below average production at shortstop, but you're hoping for a little bit better from a shortstop you're paying all of this money to. Bro, I forgot Swan played for the Cubs, to be honest. Let's see here. Master Vinman, starting rotation is a slight improvement from last season. Slight, I'll put it this way, slight with a big question mark, because I thought they could have done a lot better as far as adding another starting pitcher to that mix. There still is the option that they might go the trade route and bring in Dylan Cease, but the reports out of San Diego today say that after the deal for Nick Pivetta, they will look to move on from their closer, Robert Suarez, as a way to save some money rather than trading away Dylan Cease. We'll see if those reports are true. But the baseball people there in San Diego have no interest in trading Dylan Cease, according to multiple reports. But I wonder if the business side of things gets the better of them once again there in San Diego, and they just have to divest themselves of that situation. When does Turner sign? I'd expect very quickly here. I wouldn't expect he goes too long into spring training without getting a deal done. Master Inman, my boldest prediction for the Chicago Cubs, write it down, Michael. Ben Brown will have a breakout season. That would be a good one for the Cubs. I'd like to see it. Rafe, could they make a move at the deadline for a starting pitcher? Absolutely. This season for the Chicago Cubs, from ownership on down, has been a organizational mandate to be an all-in season, a win now 2025 season for the Chicago Cubs. That's why they made the big win now move by trading for Kyle Tucker. That's why they made that decision. That's why I thought they should have gone a little bit above and beyond to bring in an Alex Bregman, maybe even push the envelope a little bit more to bring in a Dylan Cease or a Jack Flaherty or even a Max Scherzer, somebody who could really prove in that starting rotation to be a valuable asset. I think they had some misses this offseason, some missed opportunities that they're going to regret not taking a chance on. Right now, with the additions that they've made, I'd say they're a little bit better in that bullpen. They're probably going to win a game or two more than what they did last year, but I think that offense is going to miss having another impact bat in there. And I think at the trade deadline, unless they add another impact bat, this is going to be anybody's race in the NL Central. So I think missing on Alex Bregman here took them from a team that could have been a favorite to win the NL Central to being an also ran in this division. Not saying that any team is far better than one or the other, but I am saying the Cardinals are in a rebuilding season. The Brewers have a hodgepodge rotation at best that they're trying to, patch it together. Young position players that are due for a sophomore slump. The Reds, they bring in Terry Francona. They're going to be a little bit better, but to me, they still need to add another starting pitcher. The Pirates, they have great starting pitching. They haven't done enough to improve their offense yet. They will at some point. I have no doubt that they will address that sometime here in the next year or so. But this is a real opportunity here for the Cubs to put their foot down and say, hey, we made the acquisition of Kyle Tucker. We made the acquisition of Alex Bregman. We made the trade for Dylan Cease. We brought in Max Scherzer in free agency. This was the time for them to do that, and I think they missed an opportunity here. A big opportunity with Alex Bregman. We'll see who they ultimately get to make an impact for them in that lineup for them. I'd probably be crying again in October. I hope not if you're a Cubs fan. I'm hoping that they're going to be right there, at least in the wild card hunt. But I think no team out of that Central is going to be making it in that wild card spot. So I think the division is the only way you make it to the postseason in the NL Central. Hopefully the Cubs overperform my expectations. But looking at this roster, again, just kind of look at their lineup. Where's the other impact bat besides Kyle Tucker? That's my big issue. They're going to be solid defensively. They have some good defenders out there. Pete Crow Armstrong, Dansby Swanson. They're solid up the middle. But I thought they could really use another impact bat, and that's my missed opportunity for them. Nobody on the bench here really is inspiring to me. Matt Shaw might be the one big piece that they could add just through development, internal development and growth. Maybe they just didn't want to block him. But with their interest in Alex Bregman, told me they weren't really worried about blocking Matt Shaw. I think they would have found a way to get him on the active roster at some point. We saw some rumors about the possibility of them trading Nico Hoerner earlier this offseason to the Seattle Mariners. That never materialized, obviously. I thought if they did bring in Bregman, maybe they move Shaw over there. Hoerner goes to Seattle at some point, maybe bringing back a starting pitcher to boost that rotation as well. That would have been one way to both increase the ability in that lineup and add another rotation piece. But unfortunately, they chose not to do so. All right, we talked a little bit about their lineup, their rotation, their bullpen, their prospects. They do have some good ones coming. We talked a little bit about Matt Shaw. They have some other good ones that are coming as well. Let me pull up the MLB Top 100. Want to pull this up for you guys. And I want to do it by team. So let's go ahead and pull the Chicago Cubs up so you can see where their prospects really rank. There's Matt Shaw, head of the class there, along with Cade Horton. Both of them could be on the big league club at some point this year. Maybe they wanted to leave a rotation spot open for Horton at some point. But I think for me, this is a team that they had an opportunity here to really improve their lineup, and they chose not to do so. They have some good options in the outfield that are coming, in Owen Cassie as well. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name anyway, but I'm going to go with Owen Cassie anyway. But Moises there, the catcher, first base option, he could be an impact player for them at some point down the line, but I'm not expecting it this season. Right now, I think this offseason is all about missed opportunities for the Chicago Cubs, and they can still correct it. There's still a trade deadline to come, but right now, I think this team really missed an opportunity. But look at all the top 100 guys they have. They have a really good system, even after trading for Kyle Tucker. They've done a nice job with that farm system. Now's the time to really invest in that team. The ownership set a mandate in that organization to win this year. Jed Hoyer, I think, is on a very hot seat there in Chicago that nobody is actually talking about. I think there's a very good chance if this thing goes south that Craig Counsell will be out of there by the end of the season. If this season goes south, Jed Hoyer will be gone by the end of the season, and it'll be a whole completely new system, or a whole completely new front office and manager staff that will be coming in, because I think this is a chance for the Chicago Cubs to try to win the division, and I think the ownership group really recognizes that, and if they miss on it after spending big on Craig Counsell to bring him in, another disappointing year might just be the final straw for that group there. So, KC, okay, appreciate you. Michael, can you pull up the Cubs regular season schedule for March, April, maybe under 500? I can do that here in a little bit. We'll go over their schedule a little bit later on. But I just want to go over their prospects here. Look at their farm system. They have a lot of talent. This was a chance for them to go after, say, a Dylan Cease, who is a rental option. But say you do a trade, say you put Cade Horton at the front of that trade package for a Dylan Cease. I think that piece alone would get you in the conversation for Dylan Cease right off the bat. Do I think it gets the deal done? Probably not. Maybe throw in a back-end piece as well, a low 16, 17-year-old low A-ball player, something along that line would probably get the deal done. But for the Cubs to make this deal worth it for them, they'd have to get Dylan Cease to sign long-term there in Chicago. And with two guys, not just one in Kyle Tucker, but two headed towards free agency, they would have to have a good year in 2025. I think that would add a lot of pressure to this team. That's why I thought bringing in a Alex Bregman on a big number here was really an opportunity here. Chicago Cubs, I'm not sure where their number really was in the final tally there. I want to say it was in the 6 for 170 range from some of the reports that I heard. I'm surprised that they did not get into that 7 for 210 range. I think something like that would have gotten the deal done. But hats off for the Boston Red Sox getting the job done. But I think there was some meat left on the bone here for the Chicago Cubs. As far as the best things that the Cubs did this offseason, head back over to their roster, I want to just point to, Kyle Tucker. They needed an impact bat, and they sure as heck got one. Kyle Tucker certainly has a higher ceiling than Isaac Paredes. Gotta love that acquisition. The big risk here, though, is that he's a free agent after the year. They are all in on 2025. They certainly are, because Kyle Tucker is a free agent after the year. Told Houston several different times over the last couple of years, I'm going to free agency. Whether you like it or not, I'm going to free agency. I want to test my market. I'm going to free agency. And the Houston Astros took him at their word and got a really great trade package in return for him. Love what the Astros got in return. A lot of risk here for the Chicago Cubs, but I think he is one of the single biggest improvements they made this offseason. The second biggest improvement they made is in that bullpen. Ryan Presley, I think, is going to be a very solid pickup for them. I think some of those late inning, collapses that they had over the last year or so, I think is going to be solved with Ryan Presley. You guys might forget that he was once an elite closer for the Houston Astros, and the only reason he lost his job is because they brought in an outside guy, Hader, to take over his spot. He did not lose his job. They just decided to go a little bit younger at the position. And sure, it took him a little bit of time to adjust to pitching in the 8th inning as opposed to the 9th there with Houston last year. But he did regroup in the second half, and I think he's going to be right back to the usual Ryan Presley form that we expect him to perform at. Now, again, you're going to have free agent issues coming forward with him as well, but I think he's going to lock down at least 3 to 4 games for the Chicago Cubs that they would not have otherwise won. So I think this team, I think if I remember correctly, their record was around 83 wins last year, somewhere in that neighborhood. I think this signing or this trade alone gets them into that 86 range as far as win total, and that gets you within striking distance of winning the division there. Like I said, this division is going to be anybody's. It's going to be up for grabs, and I think their offense, until they add another impact bat, is going to hold this team back, but we'll have to see who they ultimately bring in as well. Guards make their move. Solid pickup for them. Let's see here. Did they make an acquisition here? Ooh, that was one I was keeping an eye on. The Guardians bring in veteran right-handed pitcher Jakob Junis. Jakob not sure how to pronounce his first name, but I'm going to go with Jakob Junis on a 1-year, $4.5 million deal. He was one player I was hoping the Rangers would bring in or the Atlanta Braves would bring in as kind of a long relief guy to start the season and could be a starter at some point. He had a great month of September last year. I think the Guardians just added another really good piece to an already very good pitching staff there. Guardians have done a very nice job building up that pitching staff over the years and have maintained it at a very high clip there. So great deal there for the Guardians. Good point there. Rafe, appreciate you. Master Vinman, how do you decide on trading for a win-now player and risk your future for high-potential minors? Very good question. I think you have to count on a few different things. One, what is your what is your curve of your team? Is your team aging and trying to win now? For instance, say you have a whole bunch of 33, 34, 35-year-old players that are post-prime but look like they have one more run in them. Do you want to sell out and just go ahead and one last hurrah, which is what they could have done down there in Houston over the years? Or do you decide, hey, I don't want to spend on those guys. They've had their day in the sun. Let's let these young guys have their day and just regroup for another year. Live to fight another day. That is one quandary a lot of teams face year in and year out. For the Chicago Cubs specifically, let's look at their team right now. Let's see, you got age 30, 28, 30, 27, 31, 27. This is a team that has a lot of guys that are right in their prime years. So if they were going to go for it, this is about the age group that you want to build around. As far as add the finishing touches on. Are any of these pieces headliners on a team? Is Ian Happ the main cog in a team that wins a World Series? Probably not. Is Dansby Swanson the number one reason you're going to win the World Series this year? Probably not. Is Nico Horner or Pete Crow Armstrong the number one reason you're going to win the World Series? Probably not. Are all of these players good enough to be at least very good supporting castmates to a big central piece like a Kyle Tucker? Absolutely. And so that's why they saw an opportunity here. They have tons of young talent coming. So if this thing doesn't go well, say that Kyle Tucker, the trade doesn't work out, they're 10 games out of the wild card by the time the All-Star break rolls around, they could easily turn around and trade Kyle Tucker and figure out what they could get for Ian Happ, try to trade Nico Horner at that point, and then just go with Pete Crow Armstrong, Matt Shaw as your centerpieces of this team. Michael Bush is kind of another piece there as well. Ben Brown that you mentioned earlier. Just really go the youth route. They have a lot of good prospects coming. Like I mentioned, Cade Horton could be all about the second half for him. Kind of letting him get his feet wet at the big league level and just regroup there. But this team was ready with the age groups that they have, and it was either now or never. If you're going to invest in this team, now is the time to do so, and they did by bringing in Kyle Tucker. Now, if it's the right decision remains to be seen, but they chose their path. They weren't waiting for somebody else to make the decision for them. So hats off to them for at least having the cojones to make the decision themselves. Let's see here. Sean, where does JD Martinez end up? I think there's a good chance he could go here to the Chicago Cubs, but I'd say Seattle's a good option. A lot of teams that could use some DH help would be a team that I would see as a fit for a JD Martinez. Welcome in VPCZX. Appreciate you joining us once again. Went down a rabbit hole of Kings and Generals videos. Okay. All right. Let's kind of finish up our Cubs talk here for just a moment here before we get into the predictions for 2025. We talked a little bit about their wins. They bring in Kyle Tucker. They bring in Ryan Presley. As far as the mistakes of the offseason, is there any glaring hole or any glaring mistake that they made? One could be the trade of Kyle Tucker. Even though it's a win right now, it could be the biggest mistake they made this entire offseason, because if things don't work out, you try to keep everything together at the trade deadline. You try to push for a spot in the postseason. It doesn't work out. You miss the postseason. You gave up all those future assets for what? A season to finish around 83 wins again, 85, 86 wins, and just missed the postseason. And then Kyle Tucker says, hey, it's been nice, Chicago, but the Washington Nationals are offering me $400, $500 million. See you later. It could go very badly for them. Other contracts that I see that they could have moved on from, kind of a mistake here. I thought Jameson Taillon, there was an opportunity that they had on this market to try to trade him and free up some money here. Ultimately, they chose not to do so. One other thing I wanted to point out is kind of their payroll situation there in Chicago. I know a lot of grief has been given to this front office for their inability to spend, but look how much they're spending here. They're spending 28 on Dansby Swanson, 21 on Ian Happ, 19 on Suzuki, 18 on Taillon. That's where your money is going. And then, by the way, you signed Matthew Boyd, who barely pitched last year, to another big deal here. $10 million this year, $17 the next, and then a $15 million mutual option in 27. You say that they don't spend, and then they add in Presley. You bring in Tucker as well. This is a team, let's look at their luxury tax commitments and so forth. Right now, they are sitting at 209. Now, I hear you. There is an opportunity here to spend a little bit more. The threshold here is $241 million. I think there's enough money here underneath there to add an Alex Bregman, and they chose not to do so. Now, if they're still in the hunt at the trade deadline, I'd expect them to add at least another piece or two at that point. But right now, I think the missed opportunity here of Alex Bregman is really glaring when you look at their payroll, how they have the money to spend. Ricketts says go out there and spend it. They're in there for Alex Bregman and ultimately don't get the contract done because what? They didn't want to go long term? They didn't want to go 7 years? I mean, look at the deal he signed. 3-year deal with opt-outs after the first and second year for $120 million. Okay, the average annual value of that deal is $40 million. But in present day value, 3 for 90 with deferrals in that deal is what brought that value over, or the present day value down. I mean, that's something the Chicago Cubs could easily have done. Say the Cubs had offered him 7 for 210 with deferrals in that deal. I think he would have taken that deal, but that wasn't on the table from the Cubs, and again, just a missed opportunity. I hate to keep harping on this thing for Alex Bregman, but I thought that was a really good move that would have put them over the top there in the division. We talked a little bit about their missed opportunities. We talked a little bit about their payroll. Look at their future commitments in 26, 27. Look how quickly this thing goes from 209 all the way down to 47. Now, understandably, you're going to have some players get some raises in this group. Let's say they get, say, $60 million in raises, whatever the case may be. That's still around $100 million less in payroll in just 2 years. You're going to have to figure out if you're going to pay Kyle Tucker. You're going to have to figure out what you're going to do with Ian Happ long term. You're going to have to figure out what else you're going to do in that starting rotation. Do you go with the young guys in that rotation? Do you let Jamison Tyone find another fit out there? There's a lot of ways the Cubs could go financially here, but looking at their payroll, you can see how there was an opportunity here to spend a little bit on Alex Bregman. They had the money to do it and still stay underneath the tax threshold there as well. What holes are left on this roster? The biggest hole for me has got to be the lack of an impact bat in that lineup next to Kyle Tucker. This offense, to me, 2 steps forward with Kyle Tucker coming in and 2.5 steps back with the loss of Bellinger and Isaac Paredes to this lineup and an injured Nico Horner to start the year. This is a team I was hoping would have added a couple of bats this offseason. Understandably, the front office thought, hey, bullpen is a bigger priority, starting pitching is a bigger priority. But ultimately, this lineup to me still is lacking that thump in the middle of that lineup. Somebody else to cause the other team to game plan around, rather than, hey, as long as we solve the issue of Kyle Tucker, as long as we go okay on the rest of the lineup there with Happ and everybody else, as long as we don't let any of the other pieces really beat us, they only got one piece that can really be a game changer for them. And I think that could be the difference between a playoff-bound Chicago Cubs team and a team that just misses like they did last year. Come in. Let's see here. Let's kind of go into the... let's do one trade here before we get into the last parts of the Chicago Cubs part of the video here. I wanted to do a trade. So, with the holes that we know that they have, the Cubs still have a hole for me as an impact bat to that lineup. With the Arenado rumors out there today, let's look at what the Cardinals and the Cubs could do here. Cardinals, of course, Nolan Arenado, he's still out there on the market. If they can convince Arenado to go to a team like Chicago, maybe that would be a fit there. Maybe, we'll see how it works out. But I think that would be one way they could really improve. So let's add, say, another $30 million going to the Cubs to pay down his deal. Okay? They don't need to do that, but that's something they could do to get a value back there for the Cardinals. And it's in the division, so they're going to want a pretty penny back in return. So the Cubs, you have $13 million that you would want to send back the other way. You're not going to include any of these pieces. I don't think you include any of those either. Jefferson Rojas could be one. Hodge could be one. Wicks could be one. I don't think so, though. You're going to need a little bit of a headliner here. So for me, I think you'd probably go Rojas as your headliner. And then maybe a Jackson Wiggins would be your other one. Let's see how close we are as far as the deal. It's actually pretty close there. Post it. I think the Cardinals would prefer more of some pitching in return rather than Rojas, but I digress. This trade here I think would be a good option for the Cubs. Would I say that Arenado is an impact bat? Depends on how he performs this year. Honestly, he's in such a sharp decline. It could be another good bat for another year. maybe 2 at best. But if he continues the sharp decline, this could ultimately turn out to be a bad deal for the Cubs. But when you're all in on 2025, you have to go out there and get it done. That's my biggest issue here. Let's go ahead and do another one. Somebody with a little bit more positive upside here. They're all in on 2025. So let's say the Blue Jays are out of it by the time the All-Star break hits, and the Cubs are still in it. They're pushing hard, and they say, hey, we want to bring in Vlad Guerrero. You know, they put him in there at DH and just see what they can do. So the Blue Jays, they give you Vlad. Now remember, at the trade deadline, his value is going to be a little bit lower. For the purposes of this conversation, we're going to say his value is around 18-ish. So we'll say that for the Blue Jays. For the Cubs, what could they give up around 18 to get this deal done? You could send the catcher, but I don't think they would do that. Owen Casey, maybe. I think Rojas is the shortstop. Give them somebody for the future. I think would be a good option. Ben Brown could be going. I don't think they would do that, though. Maybe a Jordan Wicks, a young starting pitcher. It would increase the need for a starter there, though. That would kind of hurt. Let's just see how close we are with that one. So remember, this would be an in-season trade. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. will have half the season already gone. So I think we'll say on the high side, his value would be around 18. So I'm going to just validate the trade. Moderate overpay, but I'm going to post it anyway, because this would be a trade that we would see at the deadline, but not before. Not too bad there. You make very fair points. It's hard to hear you, but understand what it is like to live and die with your favorite team. It's hard to hear, but understand what it is live and die with your favorite team. I got you there, Masterman, man. They're big on Rojas. Curious if they'd offer him up. Triantos, they could do that one as well. I'll do a different trade to kind of keep him out of the deal just for you guys. We'll do one last Chicago Cubs deal, and then we'll get into our predictions for 2025. Let's do the Cubs, and let's say they go to the Padres to get Dylan Cease, because if the business people have their way with San Diego, they will force them to move on from Dylan Cease. Now, remember how high the asking price was for him? They were asking for Mayo and Basayo, players like that from the Orioles. You're not going to go that high, but it is going to take a little bit more, I think, than 33 to get this deal done, because the Padres people are going to make sure they get their, their pound of flesh in this deal. So, looking at what you could do, Cade Horton, I think, would have to be the centerpiece of this deal. I just think it would have to go that way. They had dangled him out there already for Kyle Tucker as well. Maybe Ben Brown could be the headliner. In fact, I'm just not sure. Do I want to put Horton or Brown? You tell me, Master Vinman, which one would you include? Horton or Brown? One of the two has to go in the deal. Which one would you put in there? So let's say we do Horton just until you get our response there, Master Vinman. What else could they do? If they put in Horton, you're looking around 25, so you need around 10-ish more. That again puts you Rojas. But if we don't include him, Owen Casey maybe. Maybe you send or put this thing around a couple of different pieces. You don't really have any pieces in that 6 to 7 range that kind of build trades here. So you'd have to include a bunch of smaller pieces. And you don't have a whole lot of those. You're saying Brown. Okay, so if we do Brown, let's take out Horton. You're going to have to give up a better secondary piece. So if they have to give up a better secondary piece, you look at 18. So you're looking, 15 more? So you're looking at least in this category here with Assad. Let's do Triantos. That would be the second piece in this deal. I still don't think it gets you quite there. Now, a way that could make it really work for them, though, is if they included another piece like a Luis Ariz or somebody along those lines. That would be a really good way for them to add another bat to this lineup as well. Just to kind of keep this trade clear of all that stuff for at the moment, let's say they put in Wiggins in this deal. I'm going to validate this trade, And there's your deal. A little bit of an overpay, a little, but I think that's what the price is going to be here for a Dylan Cease. Not a bad deal overall, but let's say we want to expand this trade just a hair. Let's do the Cubs once again. This will be the last one, and then we'll get on to our predictions here. Padres are a team that I think is going to be prepared to make a lot of trades. So let's go over here. We're going to include Dylan Cease, the pitcher, and we're going to do Luis Arraez. Now, you only have to include another 4.8, so not too bad. And you're basically getting another impact bat, I think, for the top of this lineup here for the Chicago Cubs. Where would he play? Probably be any combination of first, second, or third base. A little bit of DH. Let him play all over the diamond, honestly. He's not exactly great at any of those places defensively, so you just kind of hide him wherever you think you can hide him in the lineup that day. But let's kind of build this trade just like we did a second ago. We're going to leave Horton out. We're going to put Brown as the centerpiece. We're going to put James Triantos as the secondary piece. And then you look at this trade. We got 2 for 2 so far. But if we want to just do it 3 pieces here as opposed to, cobbling together a bunch of minor league pieces, you're looking Jordan Wicks as far as a starting pitcher that might go back the other way. That'd be a big package. Porter Hodge. Birdsell. I think there's a chance they could put Birdsell in this package. In fact, let's do that. Let's do Birdsell and Wiggins. And I think we're still a little light. Wicks's value is 7.1. So I think if you did that instead, you take him out, you put Wicks in this deal. I think that trade would probably get it done. So let's validate it there, post it. That way you guys can see how this trade would work out. So the Cubs would add a number 1 to their staff. They would add another impact bat to the top of their order in front of Kyle Tucker. I think that would be a really good option. The only issue is, again, you're adding 2 guys on 1-year deals that you're going to have to sign in free agency. So, again, are you willing to spend on all 3 of these guys? Are you hoping you retain 1, 2 guys? I think if you bring in Dylan Cease, the preference would be to retain Dylan Cease out of the 2 for Kyle Tucker or Dylan Cease if you had to choose one. But I think the Cubs would try to get both done in the offseason. But that'd be one way they could really improve this lineup in one fell swoop and add to that rotation as well. All right, let's kind of wrap up our discussion on the Chicago Cubs now that we've talked about a few different trades for them. Where will they finish in 2025? Well, as currently constructed, I would still say the Brewers would be my pick to win the division. Does that mean that the Cubs couldn't surprise me? No, I still think they'd be right there. I think it's anybody's race. If they add an impact bat, if they add another starting pitcher, and the rest of the division stays relatively the same, I think the Cubs could ultimately come out on top. But right now, I just think they're just a step shy of being improved from where they were last year. I think Presley certainly helps out that bullpen, but I think they took a half step back in that lineup. I think that rotation, while I think it's going to have some improvements from within, they had a real opportunity here to add in free agency a guy like Flaherty, a guy like Scherzer, a guy like in a trade with a guy like Cease, or any of these other options that they could have chosen to go with. But ultimately, they have not done that. And that's, again, another issue I have. There was an opportunity earlier this offseason that there were some rumors around Jamison Tyone as far as a trade fit there. Ultimately, they kept him in that roster. Looking at his numbers anyway, look at the payroll. How much are they paying for him? Jamison Tyone, they're paying him $18 million and another $18 million in each of this year and next year. Seiyu Suzuki, another contract that's seen as a little bit of an albatross, paying him $19 per season for the next 2 years. Boyd, another big red flag for me as far as the short-term ability that he showed last year. He's really going to have to show that effort, what he did with the Guardians, what he figured out there is really going to be tangible, something that he can improve upon with the Chicago Cubs, and that he can replicate and do over and over and over again. I have my doubts as to whether he can do it. After all, Boyd was not on a big league team to start the year last year. He had to work his way up to it in amateur league and get up all the way to the Guardians last year, and he pitched well, don't get me wrong, but in a absolutely tiny, microscopic sample size. That's my issue with the contract that they ultimately gave him. So, as far as the deal here, whichever were they holding out for Roki? I don't think that they were planning on getting Roki. I don't think any front office was planning on getting Roki Sasaki. I think that he would have been an added benefit to a roster more than anything else. He would have been the sixth starter in this rotation to me, but ultimately they weren't holding out for him. I think they were hoping for it, but I don't think that they were planning on getting him and say, "Oh darn, I guess we didn't get him. Now we're left, shorthanded because we didn't get him." I think they made their plans without him and hoped they would get him anyway. But look at the payroll structure here. They have some big contracts to guys that aren't exactly proving worth the cost. The juice isn't exactly worth the squeeze with any of these guys here. Ian Happ, I think, is right at his value. I think Dansby Swanson defensively is worth that deal. Offensively leaves a lot to be desired for me. And then you worry about the rest of the guys that are going to be hitting free agency, like we just talked about. Kyle Tucker. If he hits free agency and leaves for nothing in free agency, this would, really key the next rebuild for the Chicago Cubs. I think it would key the changing of the guard there in the front office. I think Craig Counsell would be out as manager, and it could be an offseason of a lot of turmoil there. But, like I said, I think the Chicago Cubs are right there with the rest of the division. I think they'll be probably the second or third team in this division, the way they're currently set up. And I think there's an opportunity for them to grasp a hold of this division, take the bull by the horn, so to speak, and win this division by getting an impact bat, adding a number one to this rotation. They have the ability to do so. They have the prospects to get a deal done, and they are, quote-unquote, all in for 2025, according to their ownership. So, at a certain point, are you really all in, or are you just saying it? Are you really willing to make it, or take the risk and trade away a couple of big pieces of your future to try to win in 2025, especially when the Dodgers are the prohibitive favorites in the National League? Mets are certainly a better team on paper. Phillies are a better team on paper. Braves are a better team on paper. Padres, to me, are a better team on paper as well. The Diamondbacks would be a better team as well. I think the Giants are one team that's probably behind you, but has a chance to be better with the additions that they've made. I think you're probably 6th, 7th, 8th best team in the National League as currently constructed. But if you add an impact bat, say an Alex Bregman in the offseason, they chose not to do so. If they add an impact bat at the trade deadline, like a Vlad Guerrero Jr., if they add a trade piece, like a starting pitcher, like a Dylan Cease, they could certainly vault to the top of the standings. So my prediction is that they miss out on the 2025 playoffs, ultimately finishing second or third in that division. I'm going to go ahead and say they finish right at the 83 win mark that they were last year anyway. I think they're right around 83 anyway. I'd be surprised the way they're currently set up if they get any higher than that. But I think they're going to be right in the thick of it all the way until the end of the regular season. So, Cubs fans out there, I know this might not be what you want to hear, but until they make another big addition, I have my doubts as to whether or not they can win this thing. Now, could I be wrong? Could they have more improvements from within than I was expecting? Could they have a great year for Matt Shaw and really take the league by storm? Could they have a Corbin Carroll-like impact on that roster? Possibly. I think there's a good chance that they will have some better improvements from some of the younger pieces than I'm expecting. I'll give you that. But what I am saying is that the other pieces on this roster, the big payroll pieces, the guys like Suzuki, Tyone, Boyd, all those guys that are keeping, the 5, 6, 7 in that lineup for me, or in that rotation, the 3, 4 starters, those guys that are, making the money, that are supposed to be consistent stalwarts in your lineup and in your rotation, aren't exactly what you'd hope they would be, and that they could have done a little bit better in free agency. And while they have a solid team all the way around, it's not exactly a difference-making team, aside from Kyle Tucker in the lineup, aside from Steele and Imanaga in the rotation, and Presley in the bullpen. Outside of that, they got a bunch of guys that are a little bit above league average, and some really good prospects on the up and come. That's where their season's going to really be decided upon, is how good those young pieces are, the growth of Pete Crow Armstrong, how good is Matt Shaw when he gets up there, and will they add another impact bat? So for me, I'm going to say they finish second or third in the division, around that 83 win mark. I think they missed the postseason. I think we're going to see Craig Counsell out of there. I think we'll see Jed Hoyer out of there, and a new era of baseball coming to Chicago Cubs faithful. Now, if they add somebody, maybe they get better performances than I'm expecting out of their young guys. Maybe they sneak into the last wild card spot. But like I said, I'm not expecting a wild card from that division. I think the division is the only pathway to the playoffs for them. If the Brewers have some injury issues in that rotation, which is ultimately very likely, they're very thin in that starting staff. If the Reds, try to, while they're adjusting to Terry Francona's style there in Cincinnati, if their injuries continue to pile up, if the rotation continues to struggle, Obviously, they could be above them, and of course, if Pittsburgh doesn't hit enough, they could finish above them. Cardinals, I'm expecting them to be finished last in the division, even though they're still going to have a solid team. It's a year about growth. They're not focusing necessarily on the win-losses of it all. They're focusing on the personnel, the growth of their prospects in their system, those kinds of things this year. Kind of a retooling season, one of the few times you'll ever see it in the St. Louis Cardinals history, so enjoy it while it lasts, NL Central, because it's not going to last long. But as for me, I think the Cubs ultimately miss the postseason. There's my good night's sleep, thanks. Sorry there, Masterman, man. I just don't see why they didn't go bigger for Alex Bregman. I think that's a real miss here. Especially when you look at the deal that he took from Boston and the hot, cold nature with which the Red Sox are really treating him this whole entire offseason. That were we interested? Were we not interested? How high were we willing to go? How much real value is there? Present day value, deferred money. They could have gotten him a long-term deal. 7 years, $210 million. And I think that would have gotten the deal done. So it's just too big of a missed opportunity for me at this point. Until they make a big addition here, I don't see it changing, and I think they're going to finish right in the middle of that division just like they did last year. VPCZX, what do you see the Blue Jays do now? Blue Jays, I think, are pretty much set with their roster. They might add a piece or two around the periphery of this team, but I think they're largely set going into the regular season. Master Minman, I take back my original statement. You did hurt my feelings. No, you're good, man. I just hope your Cubs do a little bit better for you. I know we got a lot of Cubs fans in here. You're not wrong. I enjoyed listening to you. I'm looking for the upside here. Is Dansby Swanson going to have a markedly better year than he did last year? Probably not. Injury being a little bit, being healthier would be a good thing for him, but I'm not expecting him to be leaps and bounds better offensively. Ian Happ, I'm hoping for a good, healthy year from him, but I'm not expecting him to have, all of a sudden a superstar breakout year at the age of 30, almost 31 years old. Suzuki, same thing, age 30, 31 years old, adjusting to the big league game, okay. Could explain a couple of the struggles that he's had the last couple of years, but he doesn't necessarily show that high impact that we were hoping for when he first came over. Maybe that changes this year. Tyone, I just don't see why you're investing $18 million when you could have offloaded that salary this offseason and spent it elsewhere. If you really were worried about payroll, this would have been money that could have been used on Bregman or made in a free agent contract for a Jack Flaherty or a Max Scherzer, another piece like that I would rather have had than Jameson Tyone. And again, I don't understand the risk they took with Matthew Boyd at all. But looking at the Chicago Cubs, I think they're going to be a good team. I wonder where the high performance is going to come from. And I think the only place that you look at this team and say, hey, this is a spot where they're going to perform a little bit better, or that we have hope that they're going to perform better than what we're expecting coming into the year, and that's their young pieces. If they come in and have a Rookie of the Year candidate type of season for Matt Shaw, that would be great for them and could propel them to first place. If they have Cade Horton come in and seize control of that rotation and look like the next Paul Skeets, obviously that would be a great thing for the Chicago Cubs. But you can't count on that coming into the season, and that's my issue. They had a chance in a quote-unquote all-in 2025 season to go out there and make the all-in decision on an Alex Bregman, and they didn't do it. They did it with the trade of Kyle Tucker, but then they kind of stepped off the gas. They traded away Bellinger. They traded away Paredes. Okay, fine. What are you going to do to replace them in that lineup? Well, we're going to bring in Kyle Tucker. Great first step. Then we're going to bring in some young guys from our minor league system and hope they're ready to go. And understandably, you don't want to block them at the big league level. I get that. But if you're all in on 2025, are you really all in if you're going to say, well, we were worried about the budget. We were worried about how much we were going to spend on a Bregman. We were worried about the long-term effects of him. Are you really all in or are you not? And I think that's the issue here, is that they're kind of stuck in the middle. You never want to be one of those franchises in any sport that's stuck in the middle. The 8-9 football team, the 41-41 basketball team. You don't want to be that. You don't want to be the 81-81 baseball team, which is where the Cubs kind of find themselves in the last couple of years. And I think they made some additions to this team that looked like they would have propelled them to a little bit better win totals. Ryan Presley in the bullpen, I think, is going to add a win or two, maybe three, that they would not have had last year. That would have propelled them to, say, 86 wins. Kyle Tucker, I think, is a really good piece for this lineup, and I think he's going to have a great platform year. Maybe that adds another couple of wins and would have pushed you over 90 wins if you had just kept the rest of the roster the same, but instead you lose Bellinger. You don't add enough to the rotation as far as I'm concerned. The bullpen, while better, still has some issues in that middle relief for me, and I wonder where the rest of the money is going to go this season for the Chicago Cubs. Is there really money there for Bregman, or is there not? If you're really in there for Bregman, why not give him the big time deal? And so that's kind of my issue here for the Cubs. It's going to all hinge upon that youth for the Chicago Cubs, whether they get into or if they ultimately fall short of the postseason. All right, appreciate you guys joining us tonight. If you guys were enjoying this content, this was our breakdown of the Chicago Cubs 2025 season, our season preview. Really like what the Chicago Cubs did with the Kyle Tucker move, but it's a big risk, a big gamble that they took in on an all-in 2025 season. They're putting a lot of eggs in that Kyle Tucker basket and in their youth, coming up and providing and producing at the big league level. Who knows? Maybe they're right. The youth will be ready to go, and maybe it'll be just time for that next Chicago Cubs era of baseball to start going into the big league level this upcoming season. But when you say you're all in on 2025, you make the trade for Kyle Tucker, and then you don't spend on Bregman, you're sending some mixed signals to the rest of us here. Even if you're a Cubs fan, you got to say, this front office has been a little bit in and out. They're all in on things, and they're all out on others. It's kind of mixed messages that they're sending here, and I'm hoping the best for them. I was a Chicago Cub fan as I was growing up. I wouldn't say I was, the favorite of the favorite teams, but Sammy Sosa, that era of baseball from the Chicago Cubs, I really enjoyed, and the Summer of Love with Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa. Every single day you'd have the little home run counter on the front page of our local paper. It was really cool to follow, and Sammy was the one I was pulling for at the time. So the Cubs were one of my 5 or 6 teams that I really considered a favorite at that age. Of course, I really liked baseball back then. I was 10 years old. My teams were the Rangers, the Twins, the Braves, the Astros, and the Chicago Cubs, Red Sox to a lesser degree because I hated the Yankees at the time. Colorado Rockies just because my uncle lived near Colorado, so I always pulled for them whenever I saw them play, but I was never really following them. But, I enjoyed watching Sammy Sosa play and, grew up a little bit of a Cubs fan as a result. Moises Alou, the Bartman ball, all that kind of stuff, and finally breaking their own version of the curse anyway, and winning a World Series was great. But I'm not sure if they're closer to winning a World Series this year than they were last year, and that's kind of where I have the issues with the Chicago Cubs. All in some respects, and puzzling moves that say maybe they're not all in other respects. All right, tomorrow we'll go ahead and do the Los Angeles Dodgers. So those of you that are Dodgers fans, I know they're the World Series favorites on paper. Be prepared for our updates on them tomorrow. No problem. Everyone is first place before the season starts. True. Let's see here. Thank you, Michael. See you tomorrow. Appreciate you, Master Vinman. Lived in Wrigleyville during that time. Huge fun. I'd imagine so. VPCZX. I hope the Blue Jays fire the 2 acorns on head office and do better next season. I hear what you're saying there. I'm just hoping they have a good season overall and, maybe surprise some people. Like I said, I like seeing smart baseball decisions being made. I like seeing high-quality baseball, and for the most part, that's usually what we get from the majority of teams. Now, there's a few that always make some head-scratching moves that aren't quite so smart. Some teams that are in desperation that make some moves out of that desperation that aren't so smart for the future of their ball clubs. But, sometimes it leads to the greatest things in organizations as well. So, I'm hoping the Cubs do better than what I've got them projected at, but I'm expecting that they'll miss the postseason by just a hair. But again, tomorrow we'll do our Los Angeles Dodgers season preview for 2025. Be sure to join us for that. Thank you for joining us, VPCZX. Thank you for all the likes, the subscribes. Thank you for joining us here at the Upside, following us on X at Upside Ascend, and on Facebook, Upside Sports Network. We'll be live again tomorrow night around 9 o'clock, so be sure to join us then. Y'all have a great night. Stay safe out there. Stay warm with temperatures beginning to plummet across the country once again. But we'll see you guys again tomorrow night. Y'all have a great one. Stay safe out there, everybody.